back, and we're moving into our second conversation for today. As promised, we are talking about the different activities happening in National Disability Week, and this year's theme is powered by inclusion. Am I in your village? We have three persons joining us today, persons with disabilities, who are going to be talking about their own personal experience and the work that is currently taking place and the work that needs to be done. We have with us Marshall Nunez, who is the Disability Desk Coordinator at the Ministry of Human Development. We have Gabriel Alpuche with us as well. And we have Kenrick Theus joining us via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'll jumpstart the conversation with the one we had in the break. Marshall, I tell you that a part of advocacy is education. And one of the key things is terminologies and how we refer to people. And you said that we don't use diversely or differently abled anymore.
No, that's a local term that was established in Belize, but globally, person with disability I refer to as just that, persons with disability. The United Nations Convention was established to protect the rights of persons living with disability. For context, remember, we are working on prioritizing persons with disability on the public transport. And the danger of using diverse abilities that everybody can defend that they have a diverse ability. But the priority will be for persons living with disability. And so we need to quantify and clarify that in order to be able to regulate it when the time comes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We learn something new every single day. Let's talk about the preparations that have gone into Disability Week so far.
We started, the idea came up when we had a meeting in around mid to late August. And we know that we had to start planning Disability Awareness Week, which traditionally is the last few days in November and then leading into December with disability, well, International Disability Day being December 3rd. As the Disability Desk Coordinator, we invited as much, if not all, the stakeholder agencies that work with persons living with disability. And we came together, I think we started with about 20-odd persons or 20-odd organizations represented. And the plans commenced then, and since then we have met almost every week in order to plan this event. The week got started on Sunday with a mass that was celebrated by St. Martin de Porres Parish. The participants in the service were all persons living with disabilities, those who read the readings, who did the petitions. Today, being Tuesday, is the National Disability Conference. It's a first of its kind, and the conference set forth to create participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination of persons with disability, and we are trying to establish that through policy and then later on get into legislation. Yesterday, I think the week started with some video series by BCVI, the Council for the Visually Impaired, who coincidentally is celebrating 40 years this year, 40 years of existing and treating persons who are living with vision problems. Also, the National Resource Center for Inclusive Education, NARCI, they started some video series and will be having some panel discussion and consultation with parents and students throughout the course of the week. On Wednesday, Autism Belize, that's tomorrow, will be having a guest speaker. He's an international speaker. I think he's the first person with Down syndrome that went into the line, and he'll be making his address tomorrow evening, I think at around 7. On Thursday, the Inspiration Center launches its annual calendar. And then there is the show tomorrow night right here on Channel 5. On Friday, there is another consultation. And then on Saturday, very importantly, BAPDA, the Belize Assembly for person with diverse ability.
Yeah.
See the name come back again.
See?
They will be having Daladier Drive. The drive start already.
Okay.
They have their drop boxes at various businesses within the city. If I can, they're at West Truck, Benny's, Brody's on the Philip Golson Highway, Mirab, Smart, and Publix on the Philip Golson Highway. And then they have Publix and 88 Shopping Center on the Boulevard in Belize City, Brody's downtown, and Bottom Dollar. And so we are asking to generously donate to Bapda Daladier Drive. It's going to, well, Saturday is the highlight, but they will keep those boxes, I think, for a while, so you can continue to drop. Bapda,
So be generous, people, and look out for these receptacles.
please do.
Yes.
Bapda has sent letters of intent all across the country to establish district chapters of the organization, and so these resources will be able to assist them in doing just that.
All right. So that's kind of the rundown and overview of what's happening. And a big part of National Disability Week is showcasing the existing triumphs and challenges of persons with disabilities across the world. And we're bringing it to Belize this morning. And the three of you, Marshall, while you're here wearing your Disability Desk Coordinator hat, you're still three persons who are living in Belize and have to face, Kenrick, you'll have to tell him, call you back later.
Kenrick, a very important man, right?
But you are living in Belize and you have your own personal experience. Let's start with Gabriel. Gabriel, you are employed at Fulltech. We've seen you in some of their ads and in some other promotional stuff. Tell us about your experience.
Well, my experience is in terms of Fulltech or generally speaking? In
Just
terms
general, yeah.
Generally speaking, it has been obstacles, not very insurmountable, but obstacles nevertheless. Speaking as it pertains to Fulltech, the process of applications for businesses was a very demoralizing one because I sent out in excess of about 25 applications and got back responsive from about 10 with very specific answers or very around the same context, being that my resume spoke for itself. I'm qualified for the job, however, they're not in a position to hire because they are not adequately equipped in terms of things like ramps, bathrooms, things of that sort. And so they would have to decline or put on hold just because they're not equipped in that sense.
Wow.
Fulltech Systems, Ms. Diane and Mr. Dean Fuller, they accepted that challenge. While I will put challenge in quotes, they accepted that challenge and they decided that they'll take the bull by the horn, as they say, and they accepted me, and I'm 6 years in. I know that it has been challenging, but with effort it was accomplished and it has been accomplished. And so that's just some fruitful that was just a fruitful accomplishment by them to get me on board on the team and just look at the abilities of the person rather than the obstacles and the disability of someone.
Yeah. I mean, your journey starts before even gaining employment, and that's an important factor in kind of establishing your own independence. But there's also things like school and hanging out with friends and all the other things that everyone wants to enjoy.
Well, Marlene, I'll tell you, I was never short of hands when it came to friends. I always had people crowding the wheelchair and always willing to help. So that was never
awesome.
That was never an obstacle there. Now, when it came to the commodities of having, I went to Holy Redeemer, and so if you know Northfront Street, it's a very trafficked area, especially in the morning. And so that being at a very young age, my mother had to be the champion of that advocacy, because I couldn't do it then. But my mom with Miss Neal from Narse, Miss Martinez, and with the Ministry of Education and the Belize City Council, I mean, it was a very long advocacy because to get what they call a disability sign so that you would be able to park in front of not SGC, Holy Redeemer, without not getting a ticket, because if you had done that without the sign, then you would have gotten a ticket there. However, with the advocacy of my mom, Miss Neal and Miss Martinez from Narcy, it was achieved. That just goes to show how persistence and advocacy does pay off. I mean, it can be a very, very long and dreadful experience, but with persistence, with effort, with just getting at it and not losing sight of that goal, I mean, it can be achieved. And that has been the story of my entire life, which is just pushing at it, just putting the effort, being there day in and day out, and you'll get effort, you'll get accomplishments.
Yeah.
And Henrik, perhaps you'd like to join the conversation and tell us a little bit about your experience just living in Belize with disability.
Henrik, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we're just getting you to join in on the conversation and perhaps to shed a little light on what your experience has been like just generally living with your disability.
I think basically in Belize, just a lot of infrastructural stuff needed for the disabled. I'm talking about like stuff on the streets, like the sidewalks, access to buildings. Access is a big thing for me. You have new buildings being built here in this year, 2021, that are not even putting in a ramp for access. That's important. That should be legislated, I think. Part of it also have to do with a lot of education needed as well, especially with the younger children, so they themselves can understand what disability is. Because people sometimes they stare, they look at you in a funny kind of way, not understanding. And so education is important as well. But for me, my biggest challenge, I think, is not a challenge really, but something that I take on myself, is just educating people that disabled people might be different, but yet they can still work, they can still do meaningful things, and we're getting to see more and more of that in Belize. People in wheelchair actually working and doing items. I mean, for me, I keep myself very, very busy. No pity, no sorrow from myself. I find people trying to show me pity, and that's not important for me. So I keep going, basically. And those are just some of the small challenges there. But overall, I think I'm seeing there's more acceptance, and I'm happy to see that this week's week of activities, how diverse it is, and how far-reaching it will be with other people throughout the country.
Now, Marshall, your experience is different. You experienced vision loss as an adult. So tell us a bit about what you learned when you became a person with a disability.
Okay. My journey started when I have a bone disease known as osteomyelitis, and I lost my first leg. I was working at the time. I was employed at the Ministry of Finance, and I still kept on working because it was mainly a desk job. So I mean, people would look at me, and I would always point out to them that the surgery was on my leg, not on my brain. So I'm still able to function, to do everything the same, except I'm not going to be able to run any races. So I kept going, and I find that a lot of people were impressed by that, because they would think that people would want to be sheltered, you want to be away from people, you want to be seen, that kind of a thing. And it was nothing like that. I mean, I found too that people were, as long as you could sit and explain to them the situation, because a lot of people, they're in the dark, they don't really understand what's happening. Once you can understand your situation and how independent you can be, I think they get to appreciate it more. And that's why I want people to, when you have a disabled child, a lot of people would hide disabled kids there. I went to a house some years ago, there was a disabled child, I didn't even know that was in the house. And I've been going to that house for years, because he's kept in a room somewhere in the back. But bring them out, there's no shame attached to it. Bring them out so that they can be exposed, and if there's any assistance that we had, that people out there will be able to assist, because you can't assist what you don't see, you see?
Yeah. All right, and Marsha, let's get your perspective.
I need to, as I say, I was not born blind. I became that as an adult. But I need to say two things. Remember the biblical story when Jesus was walking with the disciples and they came upon a blind man, and the disciples asked, is this man guilty of his own sin, or has he adopted the sins of his parents? And Christ responded to them that neither of those. He is blind because he wants to glorify God. And I feel like the Lord has had a plan for me. My favorite Bible scripture is Jeremiah 29:11, where it says, I had a plan for you to prosper you. And I feel like, I've been a community leader.
Yeah.
And I believe very reverently that maybe it's a part of the plan that I can be a strong voice leader and advocate for a person with disability. And that is a responsibility and a role that I take on very seriously. My moving around, even though I've lost my sight, and I've not lost my vision, but I've lost my sight, I go around, a lot of people know me, and so it's not too difficult for me to navigate. But it still creates some challenge there, and I think Kendrick mentioned the sidewalks. They're very challenging, I believe, even for people who are fully able. The slopes in those sidewalks, they're terrible, even for me walking with a cane. It's sudden that a little curve will come up and you have to fall. There are the conditions of the streets, the sidewalks, there are some missing manhole covers. All of those things are great challenges. And I think for a user of a wheelchair, it poses the same challenge. Sorry.
I just wanted to ask, because I think it's interesting how you point that out. I think it's a great way to see, being a community leader before, and then being a community leader as a part of the community of persons with disabilities. What did you learn that you never would have known if you weren't?
That's an excellent question, because hadn't I gotten into this situation or had this condition, I don't even think I would have been looking at persons with disability. So it's a very good lesson for me. What I've learned is that persons with disability also need a voice, and they need a champion. When I got appointed at the disability desk in March, I said that I was a very strong advocate, but now I believe that I'm a champion for persons with disability. Kendrick made a good point. There are people who, in this time and age, still feel like it's taboo to have a disability. People are afraid to come out. That we need to change, because persons who are living with disability are also people. And we also need to have that, or the community also need to have that dignity of life and their own pride. And so we want to restore that for those who haven't had it, or build for those who did not.
And in terms of reception to a lot of your efforts, or actually even before we reach there, in terms of just the public, how do you find people are people sensitized enough to these? I see Gabriel shaking your head to some of these difficulties. So why did you shake your head just now?
Because there's different, they wouldn't say rules, but different protocols that we follow in terms of in banks or in lines where there's special needs, or people who are elderly would tend to have their own line or go to the front. Many times it's often than not whereby we hear snickers in terms of, I'll say it in probably in Creole, why you have to go to the front, or things of that sort, whereby people they don't understand the challenges and the advocacies that that Mr. Nunez and other people like myself we're fighting for, because the understanding and the awareness is not there. I mean, I understand, and sometimes I even get the patients to just sit in the same line, because I'm not I'm not different from anybody else. So I mean, whilst there is, and I understand the privilege of having a line where a special needs or a disabled person could go up to, sometimes the snickers and the comments get to you. And so as a human, you tend to just, you know what, I understand that the privilege is there, but I'll just sit and wait until my turn comes up. And that's just something as a community, if we understand and the education is there, then those things are omitted and it becomes a part of the norm as opposed to something that tends to trauma at the feelings, at the emotions level.
You know, we were chatting during the break, and I think it's so insightful when I hear the firsthand experience of people. You said that one of the things that desperately needs to be worked on, that you have spoken about many times before, is public transportation.
Yes, ma'am.
And while you have a lot of willing people who want to step in and help, you also want to be able to do it on your own if you choose.
Right. Part of being disabled, and I could speak for all persons with disabilities, that independence is something very huge. And the transportation is not there. You go to other countries whereby there's lifts to get in bus, or there's a specific area designed whereby you don't need to get out of your wheelchair because there's clamps to clamp down your wheel so it doesn't roll in a bus and things of that sort. It's not here. And whilst in the limited cases that I've had, the conductors and the drivers, they're willing to help, it's a little bit not necessarily traumatic.
It's traumatic.
It's traumatic because they have to carry you. You don't know what will happen to your wheelchair. This is my feet, and so if anything happens to this, then I tend to be down for a couple weeks until it gets fixed. And so all of that has to be into the planning process, and there's a lot of planning when it goes from moving from point A to point B. Yes, I have a very good support structure in terms of my family and friends. However, for someone that does not have that, then it becomes very, very challenging. And so with building codes, with transportations, with, like he mentioned, ramps is a big thing, because what happened, not ramps, but the sidewalks, because whilst that is it's imperative for someone who is visually impaired, for someone who's rolling onto a sidewalk, it's supposed to be a smooth transition from the street to the sidewalk without having any bumps going up, because then that could propel you to go out of the chair if you don't have on a seatbelt.
Yeah.
And so there's an inch or like a half inch between the sidewalk and what the street is, and so the wheelchair reaches a hit, and then that could, if depending on how fast you're going, could propel you out of the chair. And so yes, it poses a slight risk, but a risk nevertheless for someone in a wheelchair, like someone who's visually impaired.
I love what you're saying, because I think it gives us an opportunity to educate, just like we started this conversation, Marshall, because here's the thing, there's, what do they call it? The heart is willing. Putting a slope, any slope in a sidewalk, on a building, does not equal accessibility.
Does not.
Who wants to take that one on?
Well, sorry, we have to look at what universal designs look like. And for me, at the disabilities, while we're doing all this stuff, we're also learning as we go along. We're doing a lot of consultation with other jurisdiction that is more advanced. Like take the ramps. The slope for the ramps need to be built at 5 degrees. In Belize, we have all different kinds of ramps. In fact, there are some people who want to be, and I know they have a good and willing heart, but the ramps have tiles. And that becomes extremely perilous. When it rains and it's wet, even able-bodied people have difficulty navigating ramps like that. And so we are looking at all those things. And what the message is that when we make the buildings accessible and we use a universal design, we're not biased to persons with disability, because able-bodied people can use the access as well. And so we are hoping that through proper education and advocacy that people will buy into it. By the way, it's a good time to to acknowledge the Belize City Council, and especially Councillor Albert Van, who has traffic as his responsibility, because we are putting up quite a bit of disability parking signs around the city, which is really and truly necessary for persons that are living with disability, especially with physical disability.
All right, so we checked that one off in helping people understand. Slopes doesn't equal accessibility.
Not at
What
all.
other one that grinds your gears? Kenrick, tell us one. I'm sure you have a good one.
The size, for example, another good one in Belize.
You're
is the
sideway
size
for
of
us.
the,
You're sideway for
I'm
us.
sideway.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you.
The another Belize that always gets to me is when you try, like even hotels, you go to rent a hotel and you find that the size of the bathroom door doesn't even allow your wheelchair to go through.
So they may have
So
other access points, but then not to the bathroom.
not to the bathroom. So the bathroom doors are in some cases, in some hotels, the bathroom doors are smaller than the standard size, so your wheelchair cannot really get through. That's another one. So even if I'm going to go somewhere, I'd have to call ahead and ask them for the width of their bathroom door, so I know that I can get into the bathroom and have access. There's some very good hotels whereby their doors are pretty much standard, so that's easy. But I find that the entrance door is standard, but the bathroom door, for some reason, they always make them smaller. I have no idea why, but I found that in lots of hotels in Belize.
Gabriel, you were talking, sorry.
There is the FFB Stadium, which is a perfect example of what the access are supposed to be. A few years ago, the FFB did some consultation with BAPDA. I was a part of the consultation, and they were able to put in ramps. In fact, they want to make it completely accessible. The ticket booths are lower because the person in a wheelchair need to be able to go to the ticket booth to purchase. The concession stands, they have lower stalls where a person in a wheelchair can go and access the concessions. They also have the clips on the bleacher that a person in a wheelchair can fasten it and stay there. So if people want to do some adjustment to their properties, the FFB Stadium is a good example.
And back to the issue of public transportation, you were saying even the respect of motorists for a person with a cane or a person in a wheelchair.
Right. So not the observations, for just to start off on the first topic, the observations with someone who's visually impaired, whereby if you see the cane, if it goes out on the street, the motorists, they're supposed to yield or not stop completely when they reach, because they have to give respect to the person crossing the street. Now, on Coney Drive, which I work, that has not, it has been often observed that it is not something that the motorists, either they're not aware, they're not educated, and so they tend to just speed off or accelerate more to try and beat the person who's visually impaired, and he doesn't have a cognitive, he can't see that that's happening, and so it could cause a very traumatic scene. And it's the exact same thing. I mean, I've crossed Northern Highway, I've crossed Coney Drive, and it has been the same experiences whereby you're in the middle of the highway or in the middle of Coney Drive and you hear a car speed past behind you just because, I mean, they have to, you're not even 50% across the street, but you hear, and there's not a respect given to persons with disability when crossing the street, and it's something that could be a very traumatic. It could be something that could end in casualty, and I believe that that's because of a lack of education as well. I mean, that is something that has to, I don't know if it's in there.
And there are two risks there. There's the risk of physical harm, but there's also the risks that persons with disabilities will make a choice to not move around the way they would want to or choose to move around.
That's what I agree. I really am afraid to cross streets. Even when I'm being assisted, because I can't see the oncoming traffic, and that is really and truly traumatic, trust me.
Yeah. See, I didn't think of that, but when you start imposing your own restrictions because others aren't as aware, I mean, it's also one of the things that we have to look at. It's a consequence of our inaction and action.
Since we are on Channel 5 and this is a very huge platform, we want to make a special appeal to motorists to give some respect to persons who use cane and wheelchair on the street. Please be a little bit more courteous to us.
Yeah. Well, guys.
I wanted to ask one question from my end is, for I suppose in general, people with disabilities, are there resources? Are you able, let's say, as a community, to one, share your concerns and experiences? Because I would imagine people with a diverse range of disabilities experience different problems. So as to enable the advocacy that you need to see some of the changes that you want. Do you find that people are willing to come forward to share their experiences and just help with the advocacy as well?
A few weeks ago, I went on a tour. By the way, we went on a southern tour along with the special envoy, and we had community meetings in the Stann Creek and Toledo districts, and then we later went to Corozal and Orange Walk. Many people came out. I think they were waiting for an opportunity to come and share their experiences and their challenges. The meetings were very robust.
Yeah.
Person with disability and their families. For me, it was eye-opening. I really didn't felt that so many people wanted an opportunity to be able to express themselves. So, you know what, the comments everywhere we go, it was that the first time ever something like that had ever happened, that they were given an opportunity. So while we did that little bit, Gavin, I think there's a need to do more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know we only scratched the surface on the things that we would want more public education about being a person living with a disability. But if people want to know more, this is a great opportunity to plug in the disability conference that takes place today. You said that there are the registered participation is full, but people can watch the live stream online.
Yes, it's going to be streamed on the Ministry of Human Development Facebook page.
Okay.
I believe it may be on the Ministry of Education Facebook page.
That's excellent.
On Vibes, and several of the agencies, stakeholder agencies, are going to be streaming it on their page.
Nice.
So try to reach out and view, because the chats are going to be monitored as well.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that for those who are not registered participants, that you may have comments, questions, and contributions, and someone will be monitoring that.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in. I feel that we've learned something new today for sure from your firsthand experience, and we appreciate you being so open. Kenrick?
Before
Yes.
Kenrick, I just really have to take this opportunity to express sincere gratitude to the planning committee, a very dedicated and hard-working committee. So I really want to express that. I don't want to get in trouble, so I won't call names.
You know, we'll forget nobody.
Correct.
But we appreciate the three of you coming in and sharing your experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
stay
guys.
safe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
With that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we have husband and wife duo.
Yep, and we're going to be talking all about a new children's coloring book. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back after the break.